Most executives don't burn out because they work too hard. They burn out because they're working hard on the wrong thing, in the wrong way, for the wrong reasons. If you're an experienced leader, you probably know the classic advice. Take more holidays, delegate more, get better at time management. And yet, you come back from a week in the Maldives, and by Tuesday afternoon, you feel exactly the same as you did before. I'm going to expose 3 burnout myths that keep senior leaders quietly cracking behind the scenes, even when everything looks successful from the outside. If you recognize yourself in any of these, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you've been trained to lead from the outside in. And I'll show you how to reverse that. Welcome to Leadership Inside Out. I help senior executives and entrepreneurs master self-leadership, transforming inner awareness into real-world performance. Burnout is now so normalized in senior leadership that it's almost a badge of honor. 70-hour weeks, back-to-back meetings, always on, always reachable, always wired. And we're told this is simply what it takes to lead at the top. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most executive burnout is not caused by the volume of work. It's caused by the relationship you have with your work. 2 leaders can have the same schedule, the same responsibilities, the same pressure, and one is thriving while the other is on the edge of collapse. So what's the difference? It's not their diary, it's their inner world. We'll look at why the idea that burnout is just about workload is dangerously misleading. How loving your work can actually increase your burnout risk. And the most insidious myth of all, that burnout is a personal failure. And for each myth, I'll give you a practical inside-out shift you can start using immediately. Let's get into myth 1. Burnout is all about working too many hours. You've heard this 1,000 times. You're working too hard, you just need more rest. Take a break. Now, of course, sleep and rest matter, but if it was simply about hours, then every surgeon, every founder, every CEO working 60 to 70-hour weeks would be burned out. They're not. So what's actually going on? Well, the real issue is misalignment, not minutes. Burnout research consistently points to misalignment between your purpose and your role. Misalignment between your sense of control and your responsibilities. Misalignment between the demands on you and the sense of meaning you get in return. You can tolerate long hours if you feel aligned with what you're doing. You feel you have real agency, and you feel your effort genuinely matters. But you start to crack when your day looks like this. Endless meetings that don't move the needle. Firefighting problems that keep repeating. Saying yes to things you don't really believe in. Performing a role that no longer feels true to who you are. That doesn't just drain your energy, it erodes your sense of self. And that is far more exhausting than any 12-hour day. Inside out shift number 1 is an audit. To audit your inner workload. Instead of asking, how many hours am I working? Ask, what is the psychological cost of the hours I'm working? Here are 3 questions you can sit with. And if you're willing, even journal on. Alignment. Where in my week am I acting against what I know is right for me, my team, or the organization? Agency. Where do I feel I have no real say but still carry full responsibility? Meaning. Which parts of my work feel genuinely meaningful to my sense of purpose and which feel like theatre? You don't have to change anything yet. Just notice. Because the moment you see that your exhaustion is coming from inner conflict, not just out of workload, you stop trying to fix burnout with yet another productivity hack. You start realizing it's not just my calendar that needs changing, it's the way I'm showing up to my calendar. We'll come back to how to shift that. But first, let's tackle myth number 2. And if you want a structured way to map that inner conflict in your own leadership, I'll share a quick resource for you later. Myth number 2, if you love your work, you won't burn out. This one is especially dangerous for high performers. You care deeply, you're committed. You may even feel a calling to your work. And so when you start to feel exhausted, resentful, or empty, you tell yourself, this doesn't make sense. I love what I do. I just need to push through. So you push. You override the early warning signs, which are the Sunday evening dread that never used to be there, the increasing irritability with your team or family, the feeling that you're constantly on, even when you're physically off. And because your role is meaningful, you use that meaning as justification to sacrifice more and more of yourself. I'll slow down when this project is over. I'll rest when we've finished this restructuring. I'll be present at home once we've closed this deal. You become the last person you take care of. The passion trap. Here's the paradox. The more your identity is fused with your work, the more vulnerable you are to burnout. If your inner narrative sounds like, I am the business. If I stop, it all falls apart. My worth as a human is my performance. Then you're not just leading an organization, you're trying to prove your right to exist through it. And that is an impossible load to carry. It's why so many brilliant leaders wake up one day thinking, I built all of this, why do I feel nothing? The outer success is there, the inner connection is gone. Inside out shift number 2, separate who you are from what you do. Self-leadership begins with a simple but profound distinction. My role is what I do, it is not who I am. So here's a practice. Next time you introduce yourself, even if just in your own mind, don't start with your title. Instead of, I'm the CEO of, or I run so-and-so, try something like, I'm someone who's deeply curious about. I'm someone who cares about. I'm someone who's learning to. Whatever it is. This might feel awkward at first, but what you're doing is loosening the grip of identity around your role. Then ask yourself, if my title disappeared tomorrow, what qualities would remain? Clarity, courage, curiosity, compassion. These qualities are part of who you are. They can be expressed through your current role or through something entirely different. Why does this matter for burnout? Because when you realize my worth doesn't live in my inbox, my diary, or my job title, you no longer have to exhaust yourself to protect them. You can start making decisions that honor your well-being without feeling like you are destroying your entire identity. We'll bring this together in myth 3, the one that keeps so many leaders, senior leaders, suffering in silence. Myth number 3, burnout means you're not tough enough. This is the quiet story that keeps executives stuck. You've been rewarded your entire career for being tough, being dependable, being the one who can handle it. So when the cracks appear, when concentration slips, when your patience evaporates, when you wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about things you used to take in your stride, the inner narrative kicks in. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this anymore. Other leaders are handling more than I am. What's wrong with me? And because you don't want to be seen as weak, you either double down and push harder or quietly withdraw, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically. Neither of those paths leads anywhere good. Here's what most leaders don't see. Burnout is not a verdict on your character. It's feedback on your current way of leading yourself. When you ignore that feedback, your system simply turns up the volume. More anxiety, more anger, more numbness, until eventually it forces you to stop. Not because you're weak, but because you've been operating an outside-in model of leadership for too long. The outside-in model sounds like this. I must meet expectations. I must protect my image. I must keep everyone happy. Your reference point is always out there in the world, other people, the board, the market, the team, the shareholders, your peers. You shape yourself to fit those demands, often without even realizing you're doing it. The inside-out model reverses that. What is actually true for me here? What am I pretending not to know? What would integrity look like in this decision? Now, instead of outsourcing your sense of self to the role, you bring yourself to the role. And here's where burnout becomes something very different. Inside out shift number 3. Treat burnout as a signal, not a sentence. When you notice signs of burnout, emotional, exhaustion, cynicism, feeling ineffective, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What is my system trying to tell me that I keep ignoring?" This is a radically different question. It assumes you are fundamentally intact. Your inner system is intelligent. The symptoms are signals, not failings. You might discover, for example, that you've been tolerating a misaligned role because it looks impressive. You're carrying emotional labor for your team that doesn't belong solely to you. You're saying yes when you mean no because you're afraid of disappointing others. In other words, burnout isn't you failing at leadership. It's your current way of leading you that's failing you, and that can change. If you're listening to this and thinking, some of this is definitely me, but I'm not sure how bad it is or where to start, I've created something specifically for that. It's called the Inner Leadership Mastery Profile, a short, practical scorecard that helps you see exactly where you're leading from the outside in and where you're already leading from the inside out. It only takes a few minutes and you'll get a clear breakdown of the specific patterns that are increasing your burnout risk, where your self-leadership is already strong, and the 1 or 2 shifts that would make the biggest difference now. You can access it here. If you're serious about staying in the game without losing yourself in the process, it's a very good place to begin. Let's pull the 3 myths together. Burnout is about hours. No, it's about inner conflict and misalignment. You can't time manage your way out of being fundamentally misaligned. If you love your work, you're safe. No. Passion without boundaries is a fast track to self-erasure. You must separate who you are from what you do. Burnout means you're weak. No, it means your current strategy for self-leadership has reached its limit. It's feedback, not a final judgment. And underneath all 3 myths is one core shift, moving from an outside-in life where you're constantly reacting to external demands to an inside-out life where your actions are anchored in clarity, integrity, and self-awareness within you. When you do that, something remarkable happens. Your decisions become cleaner, your boundaries become clearer, your energy becomes more stable. Not because the world has become easier, but because you have stopped abandoning yourself in order to survive it. If you've recognized yourself in any of this, here's the most important thing to take away. You don't have to wait for a full collapse to change direction. Your system is already giving you signals: tension, tiredness, irritability, numbness. The question is whether you treat those as annoyances or intelligence. If you want to go deeper into this, watch my video on why leaders are breaking, the outside-in trap, next. That will give you a much clearer map of how this pattern shows up in your leadership. And if you're a senior executive or entrepreneur who knows you're close to the edge and you want structured support to rebuild your leadership from the inside out, you'll find a link in the description where you can explore working with me more closely. If this has been useful, you'll be doing 2 things by subscribing. You'll get more content on self-leadership, emotional mastery, and conscious decision-making, and you'll also be quietly pushing back against a culture that still believes that burnout is just part of the job. And if there's a specific situation you're wrestling with, a role that no longer fits, a team that's draining you, a decision that's costing you sleep, drop it in the comments, even in broad terms. And remember, the most important organization you will ever lead is yourself.